So here we're going to talk about how you can review your accounts and make sure that they are nice and tidy. First thing we want to do is make sure that all accounts and bank transactions are imported and reconciled. So you'll see here we have the two bank accounts in this example. First one, we can see it's got transactions up until a certain date, and we're happy with that. That's up until today's date. Okay. The other account here, we can see that it also has transactions all up until the similar date, which we're comfortable with. So for example, this should be the date at least up until the end of the BAS processing period. What we then also want to make sure is that all transactions are reconciled. So we're chasing this green tick option here. You'll see on this business bank account, there's 28 items still to action. So what you would need to do before you start preparing your activity statement would be making sure all those transactions are reconciled up to date, and then you get your green tick. Another item that we want to make sure is sorted before lodging the activity statement is if you have any questions or queries or anything that you've put to a suspense or a clearing account bucket to ask potentially your accountant, that they're dealt with before doing the BAS as well. The other item to ensure that the data is all up to date would also be looking at payroll. So under payroll, pay employees, we want to make sure all our pay runs are all up to date to the end of the pay or activity statement period. So what you'll see here, we're happy that all these pay runs are now into the July month, for example, so we'd be happy and comfortable to start doing our June BAS. If you didn't, you would need to go and record your pay runs and make sure that they're all up to date. Once you've done these aspects, you've completed the Your Accounts Are Kept Nice and Tidy section. We'll now talk about reviewing your activity statement in Xero. To get to the activity statement section, you can go to Accounting, Reports. From here, if you search in the top right corner, you can search for your activity statement and open the activity statement. You want to make sure that you're connected to the ATO in the top right corner, because this will then mean when you come to do the lodgement, it'll go through all nice and smoothly. You'll see at the top, you have the needs attention. These are going to be the outstanding activity statements that require some action. From here, you can click on Prepare, and it will then show you some more details about the activity statement. On the activity statement, our suggestion is turning off unfiled amounts. This then means it won't pick up any changes you've done to previous BAS periods. This can cause more confusion than anything else when turned on. If you do need to make changes to previous activity statement periods, we do recommend talking with your accountant. Once you have all the information coming up here on your activity statement, we then want to review it for accuracy. There's going to be a few components: goods and services tax or GST, PAYG tax withheld on wages, and potentially PAYG income tax installment as well. We'll show you how to review the GST and then the PAYG tax withheld amounts. For the PAYG tax withheld amounts, you want to go to Accounting Reports and search for the Payroll Activity Summary Report. Update the dates for the most recent pay period that it relates to based on your business activity statement registration for PAYG withholding, and press Update. What we're going to be checking here is where it has a label of W1 and W2, that's going to explain what's going to come up and in those numbers in your activity statement. What you'll also see here is there may be some that do get excluded. So it's a quick cross-check to make sure that all the pay items have been set up correctly and that the numbers align. In our example, it's going to be the 10,675, less our amount is excluded, will be our total wages, and then this will be our withholding on our wages. So in our example, we'll see the two labels. The withholding is the 1718, and the total wages is the net of the two amounts we mentioned. In order to review the GST components, there's a few different aspects. There's GST on your sales, and then GST on your purchases. To see the detail behind these numbers, you can go to the Transactions tab at the top. From the Transactions tab, it's going to group it by tax rate, being GST on income, GST on expenses, GST-free expenses, and BAS excluded. What we want to be doing is making sure all items have been treated correctly for GST purposes. So for the first component on the GST on income, what we are looking at is to make sure all items here do that attract GST and have been done appropriately. So you're seeing over here on the right-hand side, there's a GST column. The items that should be coming up in the GST on income will be payments potentially for your invoices and the like. When you're marking items against invoices that have been created in Xero, they should look like this, where it's got payment, semicolon, and then the client. This here then would relate to also your client's invoice numbers as well. In the GST on expenses area, this is where we're making sure that all expenses that do attract GST have been treated appropriately. So you want to skim this list to look at and say, okay, well, do all these items attract GST or not, and what may need to be corrected. If you've been using a receipt catch tool along the way, that should hopefully have done most of the heavy lifting for you, but you want to make sure that it has been done correctly. If you need to verify any of these items, the suggestion would be going and looking at the source document, seeing if they're registered for GST and have an amount on it, just to make sure that it's correct. If there are items that don't attract GST, for example, transactions when you're overseas, certain entertainment aspects, or even suppliers who aren't registered for GST, they shouldn't be showing in this GST on expenses section. Most likely, they should be showing in the GST-free expenses area. So you'll see in this area, there's no GST being claimed on these costs. which again, all comes back to what the source documents are telling you. The last area for GST checks is the BAS excluded aspect. These items here won't be included in any of the GST numbers on our summary tab, and these are going to be aspects which don't attract GST at all. So you'll see here we have the payments for the PAYG withholdings on our wages, potential net payments on our wages as well for our staff, payments to loan accounts, and the like, which don't attract GST. Once you're comfortable with the numbers and they're all correct, you can go back to your summary tab and we can proceed to lodgement. If you did need to correct some items, you can click into anywhere where it's blue. It'll take you to the source transaction, and then you can edit the items from there. If you did have large amounts that you needed to change, so let's say there was a lot of transactions from a volume point of view, there are features within Xero called Find and Recode that can assist with this. Reach out if you need assistance on that. So now that we're happy with our numbers, we can go back to our summary tab, and down the bottom there would be a Lodge to ATO button, which would then be able to lodge to the tax office. It would send it to them automatically. You would then be able to create a bill in Xero to match the payment against it, and also pick up the BPay and biller codes that you need to make payments as well.